The Andean community meets in Peru in view of the serious situation in Ecuador in search of a solution to organized crime, which includes the formation of a permanent security force. In Palestine, the Red Crescent confirms that after reporting a heavy siege by Zionist troops around the Nasser medical facility, the most important in Khan Yunis. Under the presidency of Uganda, the final day of the third summit of the Group of 77 plus China began in Kampala, the capital of that African nation. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Lima, the capital of Peru, the countries of the Andean community approved a regional plan of action to counteract crime. The meeting convened at the initiative of Bolivia, country currently sharing the alliance, is the first sub-regional response to the wave of violence unleashed in Ecuador. The initial result has been an agreement signed by Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, which, among other aspects, creates the Andean Security Network against organized crime. This agreement will allow, as explained by Gonzalo Gutierrez, Secretary General of the organization, the joint action of the four countries in the fight against crime. This cooperation and intelligence agency will provide and receive information from other countries on the activity of criminal groups that they have and will alert in an immediate manner on relevant acts perpetrated by these organizations. Argentina's government announced the end of more than 27,000 social plans, including those for retirees and pensioners. The Ministry of Human Capital pointed out through its X account some incompatibilities detected by the National Administration of Social Security and the National Tax and Social Identification System, such as retirement or pension benefits, residence abroad, among others. This measure is part of the preliminary judicial investigation into a corruption network in the Ministry of Social Development and affects beneficiaries who receive retirement benefits or who received unemployment pensions despite being self-employed workers residing outside the country. Authorities confirmed the kidnapping of social leader Marley Alejandra Acosta in the Catatumbo region of northeastern Colombia. The incident occurred in the village of Aspasicas, rural area of the municipality of La Playa de Belén, when she was on her way to a meeting. Her two escorts, identified as Steven Daniel Delgado and Esfelizon Vicente Monroy, were also kidnapped. The leader is coordinator of the Popular Women's Foundation, which defends the rights of farmers and Catatuba women. The Ombudsman's office has taken action after learning of the incident. In Ecuador, more than 2,000 people have been arrested during 11 days of operations following the declaration of internal armed conflict by President Daniel Noboa. In this regard, the National Police reported that 158 of the arrests are suspects for terrorist crimes, while 32 prisoners were recaptured after escaping from prison. Authorities detailed that so far there have been 29,000 operations throughout the nation, resulting in the death of 5 alleged criminals. Meanwhile, social movements denounced the violation of human rights, as well as several abuses by the armed forces. In this context, human rights organizations denounced rights violations in prisons during the state of emergency and internal armed conflict. At the same time, they demand that the Ombudsman's office report on the actions of the security forces inside prisons, a request based on the UN Convention Against Torture. For its part, the Committee of Relative for Justice in Prisons affirms to have reports of the privation of water and food, beatings and threats exercised by the armed forces against inmates. In Ecuador, the army and the police have arrested 40 criminals who tried to take over the José Ceballos Ruiz Hospital in Yaguachi, in the province of Guayas. According to army officials, the detainees are suspected of murdering one person and taking several others as hostages inside the hospital. Police units managed to rescue the hostages, some of whom were injured and are receiving medical attention. The authorities decided to open an investigation to clarify which criminal group the arrested individuals belong to. This latest incident of violence is part of the war currently being waged in Ecuador against organized crime. In Mexico, according to Toluca ordered the release of 8 military personnel linked to the disappearance of the 43 Normalista students from Ayotzinapa. The Truth Commission rejects the decision and ratifies that they will not allow impunity to win. In what is known in Mexico as sabadazo, symbolizing a bad practice of justice, the judge Yvette Duarte Cedillo overturned the official pretrial detention of the military. The Commission for the Truth in the Ayotzinapa case warns that the military police are not exonerated of the charges and that they will exhaust all legal channels. The Truth Commission criticized the fact that they have not imposed house arrest measures on them and ratified that those released are still subject to the process. In the United States, according to data provided by the regional health departments, the Arctic storm that has hit the country has already left 83 people dead. The count made by the media in the absence of national information details in Tennessee, in the south of the country, there are already 19 deaths in weather-related events. In the West, the situation is even worse. In Oregon, there are already 16 confirmed deaths in addition to reports of power outages and risk on the roads. States like Kentucky, Illinois, or New York have also raised their deaths due to the weather. This Sunday, the situation could worsen as temperatures will drop below -10 degrees. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. The Palestinian media reported on Monday that the Israeli occupation forces repeated another night of terror in Khan Yunis after shelling several residential areas. They also attacked the Nasser hospital. In this regard, the Red Crescent confirmed that after reporting a heavy siege by Zionist troops around the Nasser medical complex, the most important medical facility in Khan Yunis, they have lost all communication with their staff. Several explosions were heard after the military deployment, and before being cut off, doctors confirmed the arrival of numerous wounded from the Al-Amal neighborhood, almost all of them children and women. It should be noted that attacks on health centers, according to international human law, is a war crime. The Ministry of Health in Gaza updated its health records and confirmed that Israeli genocide operation in cooperation with the United States has killed more than 25,000 Palestinians. The latest update has added 178 new mortal victims and 293 wounded from the occupiers' operations on the Strip in the last hours. In coincidence with the report of the Palestinian Authority, the spokesman of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Society's International Federation, Tommaso Della Longa, claims that this humanitarian crisis is reaching catastrophic levels and is worsening steadily. In the Gaza Strip, media outlets are reporting Israeli troops have allegedly desecrated at least 16 cemeteries. In its ground offensive, the Israeli army seems to have used some cemeteries as military outposts, leveling large areas and erecting berms to create defensive posts, which means destroying gravestones and driving armored vehicles or tanks over graves. Legal experts say such actions could be considered as war crimes, for it involves the intentional destruction of a religious site, such as a cemetery, which is in violation of international law. Meanwhile, Israel argues that sometimes there is no choice but to attack cemeteries because they claim Hamas is using them for military purposes. Palestinian institutions denounced the detention of 6,170 civilians in the occupied West Bank since the beginning of the siege of Tel Aviv on October 7th. In a joint statement, the Palestinian Prisoners Club and the Prisoners and Ex-Prisoners Commission denounced that during the last 4 months, the Israeli military issued 2,856 administrative detention orders, a procedure used to arrest Palestinians for renewable intervals that usually range from 3 to 6 months. The institutions specified that these arrests are made on the basis of undisclosed evidence, which even the defendant's lawyer is prohibited from seeing. Palestinians and human rights groups pointed out that this mechanism violates due process of law because it allows for no evidence to be presented against prisoners while they are detained for long periods without being charged, tried, or convicted. In Palestine, human rights organizations have denounced an Israeli campaign against the university sector in the Gaza Strip after the assassination of professors and hundreds of students since October 7th. A non-governmental organization issued a statement announcing that amid the ongoing conflict, the Israeli occupation army has been carrying out deliberate and specific attacks against academics, scientists, and intellectuals. So far, they have documented the killing of 94 university professors and hundreds of students. However, the organization warns that the figure is not definitive because many have not yet been accounted for. Since the start of the present war, Israel has destroyed universities in the Gaza Strip in a steady fashion, to the point they say none has been left standing. Thousands of Israelis demonstrated once again against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv. This Saturday, they have demanded again his departure from the government and immediate elections. A poster leading the walk demanded the Israeli government to go home now. They questioned the security management prior to October 7th and the failure of the operations in Gaza, where not a single hostage has been rescued. This is the first mass demonstration of 2024 and coincides with the release of opinion polls that show a clear weakening of the government. Several relatives of those held by Hamas claim that the Prime Minister has preferred to kill the hostages rather than rescue them. Iran will maintain its advisors in the fight against terrorism in Syria and will respond to Israeli attack that killed 5 members of Guardians of the Revolution Guard Corps. The President Sayyid Ebrahim Raisi assured that the Israeli action, which has described as a terrorist attack, will be responded. Meanwhile, the head of the Persian diplomacy, Hossein Amir-Abdollahian, cleared up doubts and confirmed that cooperation with Syria in the fight against terrorism will continue. This Saturday, Israel bombed a residential area in Damascus, the capital city of Syria, killing, in addition to Persian advisors, 3 Syrian civilians. For Tehran, these crimes are committed with the support of Washington and the complicit silence of international organizations. On Sunday, a Ukrainian attack on a market in Donetsk, eastern Russia, left at least 25 people dead and 20 wounded. The head of the Donetsk People's Republic, Denis Pushilin, reported that the attack occurred at 10:20 a.m. local time and, in addition to the dead, wounded 20 people. The Joint Center for Control and Coordination of the Ceasefire and Stabilization of the Line of Control between the parties reported that 3 shells of 155mm caliber were fired in this area. In the last hours, 43 armed attacks were registered against this region, in which 1 civilian was killed and 9 people wounded. In Russia, a fire was reported at a terminal of the Russian gas company Novatek, located in the Leningrad Oblast. According to the authorities, all personnel were evacuated and no one was injured as a result of the fire. A state of alert has been declared in the administrative district of Kingisepp while firefighters work to extinguish the fire. The causes of the fire are still unknown, so investigations are still ongoing. However, local media quoted testimonies of residents who claim to have heard a buzzing sound followed by several explosions, while others claim to have seen drones flying over the area. Novatek is considered to be Russia's largest producer of liquefied natural gas. In Germany, at least 10,000 jobs in the construction sector could be cut amid the energy crisis. According to the Industrial Construction Association, this is the first significant reduction in number of jobs since the international financial crisis of 2008, when more than 700,000 workers lost their jobs. In this sense, they pointed out that housing construction revenues fell by 12%, among other causes, the reduction of the purchasing power. On the other hand, the rise in energy prices as part of the measures. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. For a short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. Under the chairmanship of Uganda, the final day of the third summit of the Group of 77 plus China began in Kampala, the capital of that African nation. After receiving from Cuba the transfer of the pro-tempore presidency, the Uganda head of state, Yoweri Museveni, committed himself to the leitmotif of this summit to not leave anyone behind. Upon his arrival this Monday in Munyonyo, where the conclave is taking place, he reiterated the call for solidarity and cooperation to the members of this powerful bloc. The head of state emphasized the need to address today the challenges faced by countries in special situations and took the opportunity to recognize the good work that Cuba is leaving behind after 1 year in the presidency. And Cuba handed over the presidency of the Group of 77 plus China, calling for unity, peace, and worldwide rejection of Israel's operation in Gaza. During his speech at the third summit of the peoples of the South, held in the city of Kampala, Uganda, Cuban Vice President Salvador Valdez said that it was a source of great pride and honor for Havana to share the G77 plus China. Valdez recalled that his country fulfilled a fruitful agenda of activities despite the criminal economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the United States. In this regard, he thanked the group for its support during the island's mandate at the head of the group, while wishing the greatest success for Uganda. Cuban Vice President Salvador Valdez called for the unity of the G77 and China's mechanism to change the international order established by centuries of colonialism and dependence.
Dear friends, it has been a source of great pride and honor for Cuba to share the G77 plus China for the first time. We have done so despite a criminal economic, commercial and financial blockade intensified since the second half of 2019 to a more cruel and inhuman extreme dimension. We have deeply appreciated the group's firm stance against the unilateral coercive measures applied against several of our members, including the unjust blockade imposed on the Cuban people for the past 60 years.
Cuban Vice President Salvador Valdez called for the unity of the G77 and China as a mechanism to change the centuries-old established international order of colonialism and dependence.
Excelencias, unidad debe ser la palabra de orden.
Your Excellencies, in these difficult times, when maneuvers to divide the countries of the South are proliferating, unity must be the word of order for the 77 plus China group. Our effective exercise of cohesive action is indispensable and urgent in order to change the current unjust international order and free ourselves, once and for all, from the conditions of absolute disadvantage centuries of colonialism, neocolonialism, and dependence have put us under.
Also in Uganda, the United Nations Secretary General urged the members of G77 and China to lead a global change. In his speech at the Third South Summit, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stressed the opportunity to build a future of justice, peace, and prosperity together with the bloc of countries. In this way, Guterres pointed out that effective global action is required to solve problems. However, the international system is outdated. Guterres also mentioned that the UN Security Council is paralyzed by geopolitical divisions and should be reformed.
Righting our troubled world depends on effective global action. Yet the international system is out of date, out of time, and out of step, reflecting a bygone age when many of your countries were still colonized. The United Nations Security Council is paralyzed by geopolitical divisions, and its composition does not reflect the reality of today's world. It must be reformed.
The UN Secretary General considered necessary to reorganize the reforms of the international financial architecture in order to respond to the requirements of developing countries.
We rely on the G77 plus China to make the Summit of the Future a success, to seize this opportunity and to find common solutions. The Summit will consider deep reforms of the international financial architecture. Financial institutions and frameworks created after the Second World War still largely correspond to the power relations and the global economy of that time. They must be reformed so that they are truly universal, reflect with justice the realities of today, and are much more responsive to the needs of developing countries.
From Uganda, in an interview for TeleSUR, Nicaragua's Foreign Affairs Minister Denis Moncada said today's world is unjust and unequal, and he urged for political, economic, social, and cultural transformations.
De que el mundo es injusto, es desigual.
The world is unjust, is unequal. There is an imbalance, and it is necessary to transform and change the relationships in the world between developed and developing countries. There is an extreme poverty, there is extreme inequality, there is an unipolarity which must also be transformed. The world needs to be multipolar. There should be multiple centers with actual decisions-making power in all areas: political, economic, social, cultural, organizational.
Nicaragua's Foreign Minister Denis Moncada said that the countries gathered at the G77 summit plus China reject Israel's crimes in Gaza and demand the right of Palestine to exist as a free, independent and sovereign state.
There has been a firm, solid consensus of the countries represented here that Palestine has the right to exist as free, independent and sovereign state. These countries have been expressing their condemnation of the genocide being committed by the State of Israel against Palestine, and we must put a stop to it, and we must say enough is enough, and we must be resolute in putting an end to it, demanding a permanent to stop the bombings and the inhuman and savage crime against innocent women and children.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on our social media on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.